I'd like to thank you for your patience. Minister for Economic Development, Housing and Urban Renewal, Transport and Civil Aviation, Honorable Guy Joseph. Acting Commissioner of Police, Mr. Milton Daisy. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Economic Development, Mr. Claudius Emmanuel. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, Ms. Elizabeth Bailey. Chief of Data Development and Dissemination Unit of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, Mr. Enrico Bisogno. National Program Officer for UNODC, Ms. Salome Flores Sierra Franzoni. Crime and Criminal Justice Researcher for the UNODC, Ms. Luisa Sanchez Iriarte. Crime Statistics Technician for UNODC, Ms. Giada Greco. Former UNDP Survey Coordinator, Mr. Edwin St. Catherine. Director of Statistics, Mr. Sean Mathre. Director of Probation and Parole, Ms. Yolanda Jules Louis. Director of Gender Relations, Ms. Janie Joseph. Representatives of civil society, stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Miguel Trim, National Officer for the Carry Secure project in St. Lucia. It's my immense pleasure to welcome you here today, those who are present physically and those who are joining us virtually. Today's event marks the culmination of a great collaboration between stakeholders and agencies as we present the results of the St. Lucia Crime Victimization Survey, SLNCVS. The Carry Secure project, through which the SLNCVS was initiated, was made possible by the generous support of the American people through the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. The work of Carry Secure feeds into our efforts towards Sustainable Development Goal 16, which focuses on peace, justice, and strong institutions. However, there's also a strong focus on SDG 17, which is about partnership and strengthening of global partnerships to support and achieve these ambitious targets. The SLNCVS was completed through collaboration between the government of St. Lucia through the Central Statistical Office, UNDP, UNODC, and funding from USAID. Today, you will learn about the fruitful results of these partnerships in generating a rich source of information and data on St. Lucia's experience with crime and violence that can be used to develop programs and policies for citizen security in St. Lucia. Without further ado, please help me welcome the Director of the Central Statistical Office, Mr. Sean Mathre, to deliver the introductory remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Trim. With protocol already been established by Mr. Trim, I adopt it. So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to give brief remarks at the formal presentation of the results of St. Lucia's Crime Victimization Survey. At the outset, I wish to extend our appreciation to the United Nations Development Fund Program, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, and USAID for the show of commitment to the statistical development of St. Lucia, and specifically for the support for the implementation of the first crime victimization survey for St. Lucia. Generally, to drive solutions in all spheres of policies and decision making, the importance of data cannot be underestimated and indeed has been recognized at the global level. In the context of the post-2015 era, the United Nations high-level panel of eminent persons reported has called for a data revolution for sustainable development, with a new international initiative to improve the quality of statistics and information available to citizens. The implementation of the CVS and the presentation today of the results are therefore quite relevant to the global agenda and St. Lucia's place in it. The signing of the letter of agreement between the UNDP and the Central Statistical Office on 13th August 2019 officially set things in motion for the implementation of St. Lucia's first crime victimization survey. 1 year later, after a series of activities, to name them, the convening of meetings of steering and technical committees, the development of the questionnaire, convening of training activities, the preparation of the survey design and sampling methodologies, pilot testing, completion of the national survey enumeration, and the cleaning of the dataset, we are proud to present the results of the CVS. It is our hope that the results from the CVS initiative today will assist with our advancement of evidence-based approaches in responses to our inherent socio-economic challenges, which are for the most part structural in nature. Ultimately, our objective should be to have a functioning crime and criminal justice statistical system that will provide the required data to support strategies designed to address the socio-economic development issues associated with crime and victimization. Fundamentally, those strategies should be guided by some critical questions for crime prevention, such as what are the levels of crime and what are the characteristics? Has the level of crime changed over time? What are the characteristics of victims and perpetrators? What are the risks of becoming a victim? Has the perception of risk and security changed over time? How many crimes are reported to authorities? And in the case they are reported, why does this happen? And in the case they are not reported, why does this happen? Are the crime prevention policies working? In this context, the information generated by the Crime Victimization Survey allows for the carrying out of more comprehensive analysis of the criminal phenomena and will contribute to monitoring the progress of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In closing, I would like to commend all partner agencies involved in the implementation of this initiative for their contribution and commitment. I also wish to inform that St. Lucia and Jamaica are the only two countries in the region to have implemented the CVS. However, St. Lucia has the unmatched achievement of being the first country in the region to present the results of their survey, and this is why we're here today. I thank you for the opportunity to share those brief remarks, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mathare. As you heard, the St. Lucia National Crime Victimization Survey is a significant achievement because St. Lucia becomes the first country in the Eastern Caribbean to conduct a survey of this nature using the UN international standards. CARI Secure, which is funded by USAID and implemented by the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, aims to strengthen youth crime and violence policymaking by improving the quality and quantity of available crime data, while building the capacity of actors within the sector to analyze this data. The St. Lucia National Crime Victimization Survey is a key component of the project in St. Lucia. I now invite my UNDP colleague and CARI Secure team leader, Mr. John Walcott, to make some remarks.
Good morning, everyone. And with all protocols established, good morning to you all. I think what has been said thus far highlights to me how coordinated and collaborated this whole survey has been. And so I'm pleased to hear comments from Mr. Muthurain, as well as from our colleague and our chairman, our host for today, Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Trim, because I wanted to highlight today three C's. And those were around the Carry Secure project as a whole, as well as the collaboration that was seen, and also a bit about the citizen security policy. Carry Secure has been on quite a journey. It's been highlighted already who our main donor funder of the project is, which is the US aid. But I'd also like to recognize the efforts of the technical support and funding from within UNDP and our Rule of Law Fund, as well as the contributions from the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office, who have also come on board to help us with this particular project. So Carry Secure in total will deliver around $9 million US in project outputs. And this is now our 4th year, starting back in 2016. And we've got 15 more months left on this project. So we're pleased today that this culminates in activity for us around crime victimization survey for St. Lucia. And upcoming, you will hear about, and St. Lucia obviously will have an opportunity to benefit from the other deliverables that we're looking to roll out over the next 15 months. I also recognize the fact that Jamaica and St. Lucia are two of the only countries who have conducted this particular survey. The Carry Secure project will also continue to work with our other partners within the Eastern Caribbean. So Grenada, St. Vincent, Barbados, St. Kitts, and Antigua and Barbuda, as well as we're delivering to Guyana and Suriname. And so over the next 15 months, hopefully you get an opportunity to hear more about those particular initiatives. So that's the first C, Carry Secure. The second C is the collaboration. And I'm particularly pleased under the stewardship of our CVS coordinator, Mr. Edwin St. Catherine, that we were able to start this initiative in collaboration with the CSO and the government of St. Lucia, but also our very sound UN agency partners at UNODC. And it's with that collaboration started back in May that we were able to do many stakeholder consultations, refining and defining of the survey itself. And I think using the expertise from all concerned, we ended up with a very powerful result. The survey itself, we had 25 enumerators, along with 5 supervisors in the initiative. And we also conducted surveys to about 1,700 locals from within St. Lucia. So grateful for their participation. And I think that highlights the contribution, but it also means that our results can be meaningful as it relates to policy to be defined following. So that was my second C, around collaboration. My last and final C really is then around citizen security. And I highlight this because back in 2007, there was a UNODC paper written, a joint report between UNODC and the World Bank. It was titled Crime, Violence and Development, Trends, Costs and Policy Options in the Caribbean. And within that report, it highlighted 2 key things around social development and the social issues that can impact development. And crime was highlighted as the #1 social issue for much of the Caribbean, rivaled only by economic development. And that's why we're pleased that we have the Honorable Guy Joseph with us this morning, because it highlights the synergy that has to exist between fighting crime and crime reduction and the economic development of a country. Recognizing our geographical positioning and what has been touted oftentimes as the path of international drug trade, we know that crime is a major impediment for development within the Caribbean. It drives away investment, both foreign and domestic, and consequently it can slow growth. It can also impact our tourism sector, which is in our region, that's we're very tourism dependent. And by extension, it can affect our financial services sector with regards to money laundering and white collar crime. It was highlighted as well within that report that there is brain drain occurring within the region, and crime is somehow feeding the exodus within our talent within the Caribbean region, where they're fleeing from those situations to look for better opportunities for their own economic status. And so with those words, it is important that this particular exercise allows us to develop citizen security policy programs and strategies. I noted back in the early 2000s that St. Lucia participated in a gun buyback, again, coming out of the studies that this particular exercise can facilitate. And it was a very successful program, noted at the time, where 150 guns were given back in from our society and taking those guns off the street. So I just wanted to highlight that today's presentation needs to feed into what will become our citizen security policy, our programs, and our strategies. And so with those 3 C's around the Carry Secure project, our collaboration thus far, and the citizen security policy that we should be taking forward, I'll hand back to our Master of Ceremonies today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walcott, for your elaboration of those 3 C's, which are very important. Carry Secure is committed to facilitating evidence-based policy decision-making for citizen security. Policy is supported by data, analysis, and interpretation. Continuing on the theme of partnership, UNDP signed an agreement with UNODC to provide full technical support to the CVS in St. Lucia in 2019. This partnership assisted in building the capacity of our local partners to initiate and conduct CVS activities for this survey and into the future as a sustainability measure. UNDP has played an exceptional role in supporting the process and ensuring that we reach the point where we are today. I now welcome the Chief of the Data Development and Dissemination Unit of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Mr. Enrico Bisogno.
Okay, good morning to everybody. Dear Minister, Honorable Joseph, dear colleagues, I'm very happy to be connected with you, only virtually this time, from the far Vienna in Europe, where is our headquarters. Yeah, to really to spend some time with you, to listen to the also the results of this survey. You know, we have from here we have conduct a number of several projects across the world to promote better surveys, better data on crime, and very often we focus on what is missing. We are constantly talking and working on what is missing, always the empty half of the glass. So from time to time, we really also need to take time, really pay attention to celebrate to our achievements, as in this case. I think that the launch of the first ever crime victimization survey in St. Lucia is really an event to celebrate. I understand it's the first time that the country can really measure the actual extent of crime victimization, but not only that. We measure also several key risk factors related to crime and personal security, the same perception of safety by citizens, their views, opinions on the response of the state. So it's a very broad exercise. And this is necessary. To understand crime, we need these complex, comprehensive views. Crime and security are very diverse phenomena. It's not only one dimension, it's not only one crime. There are many people, different people involved. So we need this exercise to have a thorough, to be able to have a thorough analysis. That is the analysis, the understanding is needed to have a comprehensive and effective policies, as it was already said. The countries needed to equip themselves with a articulated, we can say, toolkit to monitor and analyze crime. Measuring, analyzing, monitoring, they're all imperative actions. We have seen these days, in this period of the pandemic, which is still affecting our countries, how many data we see, how many charts, how many simulations, and how many are still ongoing. Our doctors, our researchers, how much data are producing, how many exercises are producing, to understand whether treatment is effective or not, to finally to understand whether the vaccination will be eventually developed and so on. So the science is really the first step if we want to intervene effectively. This applies also here. This applies also in in this policy area, crime and security. To have a really evidence-based policies, we need a high quality and comprehensive studies, analysis, and data. We need the victimization service, but of course we know they are not enough. We need also, and this is also good and consistent and comprehensive data from the police, from the judiciary system. We need also, we are exploring also new sources of data from, for example, from big data. We are also exploring, and the center is also more than exploring, is implementing, for example, the Center of Excellence, different ways of collecting information from citizens. They are called safety audit, so more qualitative studies. So it's a system of information that we need to develop. But of course, today we can celebrate that we have a big pillar of this system. This is a very very successful experience, we believe, the St. Lucia Crime Victimization Survey. Also because, for example, there was an analysis of a vast array of crimes, and some also for the first time, like, for example, sexual harassment, firearms possession. So you see that it's a very broad perspective on what's going on in the country. And this is again needed to understand if citizens are or feel safe, which are, it's always very important also to understand what people in an area like safety, security. It's important, also very important, to know how people feel, what are their perceptions. The survey is also a very successful exercise, also because it's a result of a very inclusive and open participatory process led by the Central Statistical Office, together with the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Economic Planning, but also with other key government agencies, and also the participation of NGOs and the academia. So, and again, this process is important to improve the quality, but also to make sure that there is a broad sense of ownership of this data, and which is something really crucial to have a overall trust in this data. Trust in the data is absolutely necessary in a period like nowadays, where we are constantly, touched by fake news that invade the public debate and the public discourse. So it's another element that I would like, it was already touched upon, is that this survey will make it possible for St. Lucia to monitor progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, and specifically targets within the Goal 16, where there are many indicators that are based on this kind of surveys. This is indeed monitoring. Yeah, this is really an important term that we really always have to keep in mind. Monitoring is key to understand whether our policies are working or not. So we need This means that these exercises we need to repeat regularly so that we see whether we are on the right direction, the right track or not. With a certain periodicity, we should be able to conduct similar exercises. I understand that planning, initial planning for the second wave are already starting to be discussed. This is also a nice piece of news. St. Lucia did a great job when they in adopting the LACSI questionnaire, the Latin American Caribbean Survey Initiative for Victimization Service, and they know that their work is also ongoing to adopt the International Classification of Crime for statistical purposes. This is mostly also for the data that are generated by the criminal justice institutions. And the UNODC, together with UNDP, will continue to support St. Lucia and the other countries in the region, so that we can improve the information system on crime and security. While we are aware that in the current situation of we know that conducting surveys is very challenging, if not impossible. We really hope that other countries of the region will follow St. Lucia's example and conduct similar surveys. So I will stop here. Again, thanks for inviting me to attend this presentation, and I really encourage you to, of course, to listen to the results, but then to use the data. We need the data are not there to be, just to be produced in a nice report or to produce nice charts, but we really would like the data to be used to inform policies, so that better policies can be, more effective policies can be developed. Thank you again for the attention, and have a nice day to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bisogno, for highlighting the importance of the CVS and also the importance of using the data generated in monitoring progress towards SDG 16 and developing more effective programs and policies from that information and data. The partnership between CARISecure, UNODC, and the Central Statistics Office has been phenomenal. The collaboration received the endorsement of the government of St. Lucia through the Ministry of Economic Development, Housing, Urban Renewal, Transport, and Civil Aviation, under which the Central Statistical Office falls. The ministry was enthusiastic in giving their blessing to the collaboration once the offer of support was offered by UNDP. I now invite the minister under whose portfolio the Central Statistics Office falls, Honorable Guy Joseph, Minister of Economic Development, Housing, Urban Renewal, Transport, and Civil Aviation, to deliver remarks.
Thank you very much. Bring special greetings to all. It's a pleasure to be part of the deliberations this morning on reporting from the survey or the crime victimization survey. I would like, first of all, to congratulate the Statistics Department and applaud the work that they have done along with the team in establishing for us some data that would guide us moving forward. I thank all our partners who have joined us virtually and those who are following this presentation today. We thank all of you. I adopt the protocol that is already established and would like to congratulate everyone who has contributed in one way or the other to the success of this venture as far as data collection is concerned. Now, crime is no longer an isolated incident in St. Lucia. It appears that crime has become a part of everyday living and in various communities, in the homes, in the business place. It is something that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I think that the approach towards dealing with it also needs to change, because no longer can the policies and the approaches taken to crime fighting many years ago may not be applicable today because of the age of the internet. Just as we are meeting virtually, I believe that there are virtual crimes that can be perpetrated in one way or the other. And we need to be very much aware of our surroundings, because if we are not sure of what is happening, how do we prescribe the right approach towards crime fighting? So it is important for us to understand what is it that drives the process, where are the targeted areas that we should approach. And while the government may have a general crime fighting policy in terms of policing and equipping of the police and these things, the equipping of the police does not respond just in vehicles being available. How do you gather the evidence that is required? What is the level of training that is needed today? Because the crimes are becoming more sophisticated as time goes on. Using the internet, using different forms of social media, all of the activities in today's world calls for a completely different approach in a number of instances to be able to deal with the issues of crime. So as the survey would highlight, the areas that maybe more attention should be placed in, because sometimes we just go based on the result of the crime, or we are only paying attention when we have seen the crime taking place. So we are being reactive rather than being proactive. I believe that the information from this survey should help us to mitigate against crime rather than responding to crime. You know, there was a time in this country and in general when you are innocent until proven guilty. It appears to be the reverse now. You are guilty until you are proven innocent. Because once an accusation is made or a statement is made or something is said that is negative, that person or that individual or group or company is branded in a particular way. And that person or that company may be innocent of what they have been accused of. Social media allows people to just say anything, anytime, without any repercussions. I also need to state that in the Data Protection Act and in some of the new legislation that is coming to govern this system, that some of these things would be changed, because it cannot be right that anybody can just post any information about another individual that may do damage to their character, damage to their business, and they practically have no recourse under the present arrangements. These things are going to change, and from the ECTEL standpoint, that's the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Regulatory Authority, we are looking at the type of legislation that is required. In looking at crime fighting, it is important to understand that the government's approach in getting the forensic lab going, in being able to erect CCTV cameras at strategic locations, and I know in the coming weeks with the new street lighting program, we are expecting to have another 1,500 CCTV cameras spread throughout the length and breadth of this country that should play a meaningful role in helping the government in its crime fighting. The new police headquarters will have a command center where all the data can be filtered back into this area, and some of the activities that take place can be monitored immediately as they are happening. These are just small steps that we are taking, but these may deal with the major crimes that we are faced with. But what about the household crimes? What about the abuses that are taking place behind closed doors in the private establishment of homes where children are being abused, where they are not even safe with their own families? And I believe that these are the things that needs to be addressed. If we are calling ourselves a civilized and we are becoming a mature society, our approach towards crime and how it is dealt with must take center stage. Somebody should not be held in remand in prison for an indefinite. Sometimes they are held in remand for a longer period of time than the crime itself would necessitate. And these are the deficiencies. And this is not passing the buck to anybody, but this is coming to the realization that as we grow as a society, from being over 40 years independent, that we have to take a better approach towards crime fighting. And that is why the statistics are very important. The data that is collected through this process would be able to better guide and inform decision makers, the police, the court system, the government in its policy approach. What are the laws that are needed to be able to deal with the new types of crime that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis? Is it a situation where the police can continue to gather evidence in the manner that they have done and just wait on good citizens to supply them with information? Our approach must be as sophisticated or much more sophisticated than that of the criminals themselves in order to be able to win that battle. And as a country, we have a responsibility because crime will affect every one of us in one way or the other, whether it be the economic side of it, whether it be the social side. We are all impacted one way or the other. I think the media also, not just social media, while a lot of things happen on social media, but the electronic media in terms of the news broadcasters also have a responsibility to report matters of crime in a responsible manner, and not to hide what is happening, but to be considerate of the other parties who have been affected. Our people, when it comes to social media, when a crime has been committed and people could go in and everybody feel at liberty to record and to post these things, and sometimes family members of these people who have been affected are not even aware that this is what is happening until they see something on social media. And these same people who would commit these acts of not respecting the other person's privacy or rights, when it happens to them, have a big outcry that injustice has been done. So we are not looking at just the criminal activity that includes guns and robberies and things of that nature, but crime in general. What I do, how does it affect the other person? In what way does it impact in a negative way the lives of other individuals? And so that is why I applaud the work that is done in this whole initiative, because it will inform us on the type of policy positions that we should take. It would help the law enforcement agencies, from the customs down to our immigration officers, our crime fighting unit in the police force, our SSU, even our traffic people. Most times the police is called to testify in court based on the measurements they have taken for an accident, because the person who may have been wrong may try to end up being right. And so the CCTV cameras have been able to help in some of these instances to be able to bring some clarity to what is happening. Now, on the other side of this, in closing, some people feel that their rights to privacy is being infringed on in that manner. Why should every street corner that I turn in Castries or anywhere in St. Lucia, when you have CCTV cameras, then somebody can monitor where you are, at what point, but that should only apply to law enforcement agencies who would be able to do this. So there is a balancing act that is required on the part of the law enforcement persons and the rights of the citizens as to how, and it is a very delicate balance that is needed. That is why the survey and the information from the survey would help guide us in formulating the right policies to be able to deal with it. So I congratulate everyone who's involved, who has been involved, and I trust that the information from this survey would not just be another set of information that is put on the shelf to gather dust somewhere or stored away on some hard drive to be remembered 10 and 15 years from now, but that it would help us in formulating the right policies for crime fighting and to make our country a much safer and much better place to live. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph, for highlighting the importance of using the data from the SLNCVS and other sources of data in innovating our approaches to crime in St. Lucia and moving towards evidence-led policing. Even more so as crime is evolving in the digital age. It's interesting to note that the SLNCVS has included 2 never-before-investigated modules, one of which was cybercrime. You've been hearing about the results of the SLNCVS. It's now time to understand how we got to where we are this morning. Please join me in welcoming the CVS coordinator, former, Mr. Edwin St. Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trim. Protocols have already been established. Of course, I know we have our PSs, our minister, Guy Joseph, our PSs, Mr. Emmanuel and Ms. Bailey, fellow statisticians, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Let me share my screen so I can begin my presentation to give you an update of the St. Lucia CVS process. I take it everybody's seeing my screen, Mr. Trim? Okay. All right. So the St. Lucia Crime Victimization Survey, the implementation of this project was funded by, as has been said by previous speakers, by USAID through the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and was implemented by the Carry Secure project with full technical assistance delivered by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, through the Center of Excellence in Statistical Information on Government, Crime, Victimization, and Justice. So at the outset, the Statistical Office, the Ministry of Home Affairs, Justice, and National Security were the lead and co-leads in the formation of the National Steering Committee for the St. Lucia National Crime Victimization Survey, SLNCVS. And this committee was composed of various government and non-government institutions. With respect to the government institutions, the police force, Department of Justice, the courts, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Ministry of Education, Innovation, General Relations, Sustainable Development, Ministries of Equity, Social Justice, Empowerment. We also had the South Louis Community College, the UWI, faith-based groups, the National Youth Council, the community organization called RISE, USAID, UNDP, of course, USAID as a funder, UNDP as the implementing agency, with the full technical support, again, of UNODC. Now, the target population for this survey and the reference period, because this is a crime victimization survey, the focus was on the non-institutional population, that is, people living outside of institutions like hospitals, prisons, hotels, and so on. Non-institutional population, that is residents of households 18 years and over, who are usual residents of St. Lucia, meaning these are people who would have been in St. Lucia for 6 or more months and intended to be in St. Lucia for the next 6 or more months. Okay, so that is the reference population, resident households. Persons in resident households 18 years and over. The reference period for the survey was from September 2018 through to August 2019. The survey would start right after the reference period. So the period that is being referenced by the survey is the year immediately preceding the start of the survey. The CVS measured a total of 14 crimes, right? Specifically, and 2 crime-related issues. The questionnaire was divided up into many different modules, but the module, there were 14 modules, including 2 crime-related modules on sexual harassment and firearms. Okay, and you can see on my screen a listing of the modules. Car theft, car parts theft, theft of objects inside vehicles, motorcycle theft, burglary, robbery with violence and without violence or theft, bank fraud, consumer fraud. Some of these are newer types of crime that we've seen an increase in incidents of. Cybercrime, these are again new types of crime. Cybercrime incorporated email hacking, social media hacking, cyberbullying, malware and ransomware. Then bribery, okay, especially related to of officials, public related incidents in some cases, assault and injury, threats and extortion. And of course, the new areas was cybercrime, sexual harassment, and the whole area of firearms. So all of these areas will be reported on in terms of the results that will be presented subsequent to this presentation. So the main vision or objective for the conduct of this CVS is to measure indicators related to goal 11, that is to make cities and human settlements safe, inclusive, human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And there is a specific indicator on sexual harassment, physical or sexual harassment related to that. And goal 16, to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Okay, and there are a number of indicators on personal safety while you are in your neighborhood, the extent to which you experience incidents of crimes and so on that are associated with that goal which our governments have decided on and agreed to. The specifics of these indicators will be dealt with by my colleague from UNODC much more directly. Okay, so we have done a sample survey of residents selected at random from approximately a little over 2,000 households in St. Lucia. Because we have a representative sample, there's a certain level at which this data can be used. Okay, this data has a variable for defining the northern area of St. Lucia and the southern area of St. Lucia. And all of the data and indicators can be presented within the context of what is north, Castries and Gros-Islet, or represents 55% of the population, versus the rest of St. Lucia, which is mostly southern. And that is the remaining 45% of the population. So the breakdown of these 2,000 cases can produce reliable indicators at the national level, at the northern region level, or at the southern region level, defined, northern being defined, of course, by Castries Gros-Islet, with the rest of St. Lucia being defined also. It can also be defined as urban-rural, where you focus on Castries and the towns, which is 70% of the population. So St. Lucia is predominantly urban, followed by what is considered rural, the remaining 30%. This is the levels at which a lot of the indicators needs to be considered. Very often in St. Lucia, and as Director of Statistics, I have experienced it, where people will take one district, they may have access to the data set, they'll take one district and they'll compute an indicator for a very small district within St. Lucia and conclude that this is the indicator for the district. Whereas they do not understand that that indicator has no power, because it is not backed up by a sufficient number of cases to allow you to make any conclusive statement or about an indicator when there is not enough statistical power associated with the indicator. So I think this is something that needs to be very strongly borne in mind, that any indicator that is referenced in any report which follows this this rollout that we're doing here this morning can only be presented at the level of north-south, urban-rural, and not at the level of districts like Suzel, Vieux-Fort, and so on. All right, except for Castries, which is a sufficiently large district covering 40% of the population, where some of the indicators would be significant. So we used the enumeration district map of St. Lucia, and of course, that was the basis of selecting, areas within each of the districts of St. Lucia. You see St. Lucia had divided up into districts. Then within those districts, we would have sorted the areas by their socio-economic characteristics, and then systematically selected those areas. Then within these selected areas, systematically selected households, and then within the household, select one person 18 years and over at random. So that was the strategy. So you see here the context of some of the data, so based on that map I just showed you here, 73 areas, for example, were selected in Castries. I'm looking at, So this is the sample design methodology that was used that I just described in words. Okay, you can see effectively you can say it's a 2.6% sample of total households or 1.3% of the population 18 years and older. You see the districts in column 1. In the second column, you see the enumeration district. These were the small areas within the districts that I had shown. In Castries, we selected 73 of those. In Ancillary, 8, Soufrière, 8, 9 in Choiseul, and so on, all the way across the whole country, right, down to Gros-Islet, where we selected 32 of these areas. And then you can see we visited the number of households that we visited, right? 828 in Castries, 102 in Ancillary Canaries, right? And all the way to Gros-Islet with 319. And then, of course, what you visit is your total expectation. And then after the visit, there's some amount of non-response, no contacts, people who you cannot reach, and so on. So we get what we have obtained. And you can see the response rates with Labrie recording almost, well, a 100% response rate, and all of the other districts slightly lower with Castries. I'm actually a little surprised how well Gros-Islet performed. They don't normally perform very well when it comes to response rates. So this is our response rate based on our visits. So that was the organization of the survey. This is the process that we went through. Persons have spoken to it. We had various pilot tests of the questionnaires up until September 2019. We shared the questionnaire with our national committee members who completed it and returned it with comments. We had meetings with our national committee, steering committee members, and they made comments and improved the quality of the questionnaire. For example, a place to visit, the safety of a place visited, the beach was never in the original template that UNODC would have presented. But when our committee looked at it, they knew quite clearly that, you know, you couldn't have a questionnaire without evaluating the safety of our beaches. Okay, and that was one amendment, for example, that came from the process. But there were many others, a lot of them. Okay, and we held then. After that, we held a training session between the 10th to the 13th of September, and subsequent to this, the CVS started on the 20th of September and concluded on the 15th of September. During that month after that period, we cleaned the data and presented it to UNODC. We had some back and forth and waiting, and concluded that process. Okay, so the process by which we captured our data was with the use of Android computers, okay, and that improved timeliness of the data, its quality, and allow us to collect new types of data, including validating the collection of the point where the data was collected. So we have a GPS point telling us exactly where the data was collected, and also in some cases, a validation by voice recording of the person speaking about their victimization experience. So we have a very high confidence in the quality of this data. Okay, so here you can see our process. We design our questionnaire at D, we post it to a cloud website. We had our supervisor at S. Our supervisors then supervise the tablets, who are the enumerators, who receive the questionnaires. The questionnaires were then returned to the supervisor for validation. In some cases, the supervisor may reject it, but eventually all this data would get posted into the HQ for analysis. 1 second, sorry. Okay, so you can see what's happening here. And of course, eventually, this data would be posted from the HQ into our databases to allow us to generate reports, charts, and maps. Our enumeration team visited the household. These are the tablets that they used. This is one example of an interview that was done. We converted all our paper questionnaires into tablet-based formats. You can see the format of the questionnaire highlighted on the screen right there. And you can see the 14, you can see basically aspects of the electronic questionnaire. We used an algorithm to randomly select a person 18 years and over within the household using software installed on the tablet. This is an algorithm, this is a Kish algorithm that many statisticians would deploy on tablets. And you can see the modules of the questionnaire: dwelling identification, demographic data, public security perception, and authorities performance. And then we went into the telescoping part. We first asked the victim or the potential victim, the respondent, whether they had experienced any victimization in the past 3 years. So this was sort of setting up a 3-year telescope, and then we telescoped a narrower level at 12 months. So the measurement that takes place for all the crimes is at 12 months, but by bringing people from a 3-year period to the 1-year period in terms of asking the questions, you have even more accuracy in the results that get delivered. Then you have sexual harassment and the possession of firearms. You can see on that middle tablet representation the capture of GPS coordinates that tells you exactly where a questionnaire would have been done. This is higher up the Waterworks area in St. Lucia, and you can see the lat long coordinates. And also you can see parts of the public security perception of authorities questionnaire that ask about how safe you feel walking alone in your neighborhood. Other questions, wherever this is what crime you think you may have been you think you may become a victim of, and you will see in some of these questions how they are related to the results that will be presented shortly. Victimization screening questions. Okay, this is the 12-month period, and all these questions would have been asked for the different areas that I would have identified, the 14 modules. Okay, now I would like to ask you about some detailed questions about crimes that you said you or any member of your household have suffered and related to the past 12 months. And these questions, some people would ask, well, did you ask whether, some people may ask the question, how were the questions asked? Well, the questions were not preemptive in nature in terms of the ICCS. What I mean by that is that we didn't take a classification in the ICCS and ask the respondent, did you experience robbery? All right. What we did is we explained within the question the experience, and then asked the person how many times that specific incident occurred. All right. And so that was the process that was used to ask the question. All right. For example, it says you mentioned that motor vehicle parts were stolen during the past 3 years. Could you tell me if this incident occurred in the past 12 months? That is from September 2018 to August 2019. So you reference the 3-year period because they would have said that, and then find out if within that 3-year period you're referring to the last 12 months, okay? And so on. And then, of course, the number of incidents. And based on the number of incidents, modules would open up, and the respondents would be asked to to describe 3 of the most recent incidents, and then we document the responsiveness of the authorities to the incident and various questions. And then right after we completed the modules, we went into sexual harassment, okay? And there were many different types, from stalking and different types of sexual harassment situations that are described, and person's experience of that situation. Who were the perpetrators, their sex, was it a combination of male, female, and so on. And then we looked at the whole issue of firearm possession. This firearm possession is what will lead into the indicators that will be revealed, the results that will be revealed in terms of the proliferation of firearm. What percentage of households own a firearm, for example? We would have asked questions like, how many recall 5 households. Okay, think about 5 households that you know. And then we would ask them, from what you know, how many of these households do you think have firearms in their dwellings? And then you drill in further. Among these households, what do you think that you think have firearms? How many of them do you know directly that they have firearms in their households? That process allows for the computation of the indicator on the prevalence of firearms in households. So this is our fieldwork management. We had these 23 interviewers spread out across the island, doing visiting all of these households that I mentioned before. Of course, enumerators were supervised, one supervisor to 4 to 5 enumerators. Okay, so these ones you see under the supervisor column are really half a person, if you like, because it should add up to 5. Okay, and that was our process. We visited many areas in St. Lucia using these enumeration district maps. That's the map that determines the areas you visit. You can see small black square delineation lines within there that tells you exactly what area you've been assigned, and then you would systematically visit the households, and the households pre-identified, and then you'd go into the home, list all members, you would select one member 18 years and over after you've listed them, persons 18 years and over. You'd select one by a random process and do an interview. Okay, these are the show cards that we used to guide the respondent in responding to the questionnaire. All right, this is the headquarter module that we set up that supervisors could log in and send in the questionnaires to an HQ where a supervisor could log in, review questionnaires, make comments. If they're not up to scratch, return them to the tablet of the enumerator via Wi-Fi and the cloud. Okay, so this is the process. The sample size, based on sample size configure, I think for the future, this survey, if at all possible, should consider an increase in the sample size. This time we went with a target of a little over 2,000 and ended up with a total number of household representatives, if you like, of 1,740. So perhaps the next time we can try to target 3,000. The issue of bribery, I think this survey has given us an experience that the bribery related to institutions is focused on specific institutions. And you will see that coming out of some results, because that list that we used was perhaps a bit too long. The programming of consistency checks within our application, our tablet application, can be improved, especially as it relates to sexual harassment. However, many checks were inbuilt, and we did have a very clean data set in that process. And of course, the inclusion of key questions on type of crime victimization in the census is a byproduct of this process. The census questionnaire have been significantly improved because of this process. Okay, and I think this crime victimization survey will also benefit from doing something maybe a little more robust with sexual violence. I don't know how that's possible. And also the minister referred to the measurement of fake news and how you do that. We had a long discussion at UNODC about that, but these are very difficult things to measure. Okay, so for now, cybercrime and how it's been measured, in my view, very effectively. Bank fraud, consumer fraud, do quite a reasonable job of measuring some of these new crimes. Thank you very much. Mr. Trim.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Sinka, for highlighting the process that has taken us to this stage. Now, the moment we've been all waiting for, the presentation of the results of the St. Lucia National Crime Victimization Survey. The Center of Excellence for Statistical Information on Government, Crime, Victimization, and Justice, the Center of Excellence, was created in 2010 with the purpose of initiating technical cooperation activities between the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Salome Flores Sierra Franzoni, the coordinator of the Center of Excellence in Statistical Information on Government Crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Well, I think after this introduction, very comprehensive and very depth, I think we're ready to review the main results. And yeah, I think let's jump into it. Yeah, I think some of the presenters already highlighted the importance of the survey. We just wanted to add a few words on that. This survey complements existing records from police, as it helps everyone, help us to understand the actual levels of crime, because through this survey, we can estimate what is the percentage of crimes that are not reported to the police. So it is a very rich source of information that really complements data that we already have. It also tells us more details about the household crimes, but also the personal crimes. Like Enrico already mentioned as well, this survey gives us information about the perceptions of people regarding their safety, but also the perceptions about their performance of the authorities in charge of security strategies. And all this information really are indicators of the well-being of the community. So again, this is a very rich source of information that is good to have for this reference period, but it would be great to have a second wave to really understand how the different phenomena and perceptions that are measured in this survey are evolving over time, and also to try to assess whether or not government strategies and interventions are delivering the expected results. Now, this survey was based on 2 international standards. The first one, the Manual on Victimization Surveys. This is a manual that was published a number of years ago by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. And it's really a joint effort between different communities, even experts from the academia, different statisticians from all over the world, and the UN Economic Commission from Europe. And this is the manual that most of the countries conducting this type of surveys follows. But we also consider the International Classification of Crime for statistical purposes. And using this classification really allow us to compare the results from this first San Lucia National Crime Victimization Survey to other surveys in the Caribbean, but also in the Americas and around the world. So just to say that we're very pleased in UNODC to have San Lucia joining these countries that are already producing data on crime victimization using international standards. I think my colleagues already mentioned the link of the results of this survey with the Sustainable Development Agenda. Mr. St. Catherine already mentioned that these results can help San Lucia to monitor progress on 5 indicators, one that has to do with goal 11 and 4 of them, 4 of them that have to do with goal 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions. But I also would like to stress the fact that in this survey, we are also including a gender perspective, because we're really making an effort of making visible how different crimes affect female and male. And this is really also complying with goal 5 on gender equality. These are the indicators that San Lucia can report now using the results of the survey. UNODC, it's actually the custodian agency for a number of them, or pretty much all of them except 11, but we're also involved in that one. So the one on sustainable cities and communities is about measuring the prevalence, the proportion of persons that are victims of situations related to sexual harassment. And we also have 4 indicators of goal 16 that have to do with general prevalence of physical and psychological violence, people's perception of safety, reported crimes. This is the percentage of crimes that are reported to the authorities. And finally, an indicator that is also extremely difficult to measure, that is the proportion of persons that experience bribery when having contacts with different public officials. So this is the information that can be used for reporting on the indicators of the Sustainable Development Agenda. Now, this survey also follows a regional standard that I think was already mentioned as well by Mr. Bisogno from UNODC headquarters. For the last years, UNODC, together with this Center of Excellence, which is a UNODC project, have developed a standardized methodology for the region, together with 13 countries, experts from 13 countries, people from academia, people from criminal justice institutions, but also statisticians, that together develop this regional methodology and a standardized questionnaire. This initiative, called the Latin America and the Caribbean Crime Victimization Survey Initiative, LACSI for short, was also supported by UNDP, of course, by the Organization of American States, OAS, and also by the Inter-American Development Bank. And actually, a number of countries in the region are already following this standard. So now we have more comparable data on how crime victimization is affecting all these countries. I think, again, Mr. Walcott already mentioned that today, San Lucia becomes the first country in the Caribbean launching the results of a national crime victimization survey. We understand that Jamaica, it's almost about to launch the results. Hopefully they will be able to do it later on in 2020. And well, we already heard from him the good news about the plans of supporting other countries in the region in producing similar surveys. So yeah, we will be happy also to participate, and we're really looking forward to hear about more countries undertaking this type of exercise and producing data of quality that can really help us understand what the problems the communities are facing. Now, let's go into the main results. I have to say that these types of surveys produce a lot of information, and it's really difficult to compile and select key indicators. We did a very important effort to only include in these presentations those indicators that are key. But of course, this is only a snapshot of the information that you can find. And let's start with the information about the victims. So the St. Lucia National Crime Victimization Survey estimates that 18% of population of 18 years and over was victim of at least one crime in the reference period. Out of these 18%, 54.7% of them were males and 45.3% were females. As you can see on the right-hand side, we have included other countries, the percentage of this same indicator in other countries, so you can see a comparison. Even though it's not the same reference period, it's pretty close. So you can see that St. Lucia, it's kind of in the average for some countries. If we look at the victims per type of crime, we found that out of a total number of 24,255 victims, almost 30% of them were victims of threats. Over 25% were victims of theft, and over 23%, well, 22% were victims of domestic burglary. So these are the crimes that produce most of the victims. And on the opposite end of the graph, we see that there are other types of crimes that it's good news that don't produce that many victims, like bribery, motorcycle or scooter theft, and motorcycle vehicle theft. Now, if we look at more details about the crimes, the context in which they occur, and the perpetrators, we found that a total of 48,290 crimes occurred. And again, the pattern is the same. Most of the crimes were threats with 30%, theft with 12.1%, domestic burglary with 11.1%, assault and injury with 10.5%. And again, on the opposite end of the graph, we see robbery, motor vehicle theft, bribery, and motorcycle scooter theft as the crimes with the least incidents. And again, we included the rates for other countries, so you can see it as a reference, but I'm not going to stop there. In this slide, we have included a comparison of the victims vis-a-vis the number of crimes. And really the message in this slide is that a person could have been victim of more than one crime. The survey estimates an average of 2 crimes per victim, and females in average are victims of more than one crime, 2.1, and males of 1.9 crime. We see the comparison there between the number of threats and the number of victims of threats. And well, of course, there are many threats, and yeah, you can basically conclude there that the victims in average of threats were victims at least twice of this crime. And we see kind of the same pattern in most of the crimes. However, in extortion, there is a different story, and you can see it there. We found that the survey estimates that 2,130 extortions took place, but only to 622 victims. So really, some of the victims are experiencing, we can say, maybe 3 crimes in average. So which is not positive, of course, and it's a call for attention there on this type of crime. Now, in the survey, we could also review in which months are crimes occurring, and we found that most of them occurred between July and August, and that's the case for St. Lucia and the different geographical areas in the north and in the south. So yeah, this is basically the message, and well, crimes usually have some seasonality, And of course, we have to review what are the additional security measures that perhaps the authorities should consider in those months in which we can see that there are more crimes occurring. If we look at the perpetrators' characteristics, we found that in 58.5% of the crimes, there was only one perpetrator committing them. In 15.5%, there were 2 perpetrators. In 8.3%, there were more than 3 perpetrators. And in 5%, there were 3 perpetrators. Most of the perpetrators were men. 66.9% of the perpetrators, again, were men. A combination of men and women was present for 13.8%, and 12.3% were committed by only women. Now, about the relationship with the perpetrator, in this slide, we see 4 different possibilities of, let's say, profiles of the perpetrator, and we found that there are variations between crimes. For assault and injury, the victims identified that the perpetrator mostly was the spouse or partner at the time. For threats, the perpetrators mostly identified were the neighbors. And finally, for cybercrime, the higher number of perpetrators identified were friends at a time. Now, if we look at the influence of alcohol and drugs on perpetrators, we found that for 33.4% of the perpetrators were reported to be under the influence of alcohol and drugs when committing the crime. And again, there is a variation there per type of crime. And but if we see it from a different perspective, we found that in 4.9% of the victims, there was this condition of vulnerability of the victim during the victimization. And again, there is a variation there by type of crime. About the use of weapons, the survey estimates the weapons in crimes in which the victim was present. This is crimes such as robberies, assaults, injuries, and threats. And in 30.19% of the cases, the perpetrator used a weapon or threatened to use the object as a weapon. The most used weapon we found was knife or sharp object with 44.7%, followed by a firearm with 34.7%, and also 14.8% used a blunt object or other objects as a weapon. Now, another important element that Mr. St. Catherine already highlighted was that we were able to explore and estimate the number of instances related to bank fraud. This was 1,266, and the types of bank fraud that we found were in 73.6% of the cases, unauthorized use of credit or debit card on the internet. In 19.8% of the cases, same unauthorized use of a credit or debit card, but in a store, and 3.6% were victims of a partial or total money withdrawal from their bank account. And finally, well, a residual category for other types of bank frauds. Now, this is one of the surveys that produce data to estimate cybercrime. Not all the victimization surveys around the world include this indicator, and we're very happy that St. Lucia decided to include it because it's relevant, extremely relevant, even more with the pandemic that we are facing. So in the reference period in St. Lucia, we found that 10.9% of the population of 18 years and over were victims of at least one type of cybercrime. You see there the total number of cybercrimes that the survey estimated. 31% were associated with malware, 30.9% with email hacking, 24.6% with social media hacking, 8.3% with cyberbullying, and finally 5.3% with ransomware. Another indicator that it's difficult to measure, it's one of the indicators of the Sustainable Development Agenda. It's the one regarding bribery. And for this one, we have to make sure that we only consider those persons that had contact with public officials. And out of those, we found that a total of 199 persons, 0.333, this is a very small percentage, were victims of bribery. And the institutions with whom these incidents were experienced were public utility agents with 53.1%, land registry employees with 26%, police with 11%, and finally security guards in public institutions with 8.9%. Now we are moving on to the cost of crime. The cost of crime, it's estimated globally, and the total cost of crime for the reference period was 64,082,580 Eastern Caribbean dollars, and this is divided in two main concepts. The first and big one is 78.6% associated with losses as a result of a crime, and 21.4% is associated with household expenditures on crime protection measures. And in the next slide, we can see what types of security measures are households adopting. The most used ones are households that installed gates or security bars on windows. There's also households that reported having a watchdog, installing special door locks and other measures. But we also found, in a small percentage, only 1.6% also reported having bought a firearm. Now, about the report of crime, this is also an indicator of the Sustainable Development Agenda. We found that 65.8% of crimes were not reported to the police, as opposed to 34.2% of crimes that were reported to the police. And there is a slight variation in the north and south areas, not too far, but yeah, you can see it on the slides. And I have to say that, yeah, the percentage of unreported crimes, it's, let's say, very positive in comparison to other countries in the region. Now about the reasons for not reporting, again, if we see at the overall figure, we see that 30.6% of the crimes are not reported because people think that the authority would not have done anything. In 23.7% of the population reported that the crime was not serious enough. 22% reported that they solved the crimes themselves. And finally, 18.7% said that they not reported because they thought it was a waste of time. Now, on the opposite perspective, the most reported crimes were robbery, domestic burglary, motorcycle and scooter theft, and the least reported crimes were consumer fraud, cybercrime, and bribery. The authority to which most crimes are reported is the police, with 96.8%, but we also found a very small percentage of 0.2% that were reported to the city constabulary. Now, we also explore the perception of satisfaction of the people that reported their crimes, and almost half of them reported or perceived some dissatisfaction. And these are the reasons. why they thought they were not satisfied after reporting their crimes. 70.8% thought or perceived that the authorities did not do enough or didn't show enough interest. 37.1% were not satisfied because the authorities could not find or apprehend the perpetrator. 33.1% were not satisfied because the authorities did not recover the stolen property or lost goods. 19.6% reported that they were not kept properly informed. And finally, 18.6% perceived that they were not treated properly. Now about sexual harassment, which is also an indicator of the Sustainable Development Agenda, the survey estimated that 10.3% of the population of 18 years and above in St. Lucia experienced at least one type of situation related to sexual harassment. Out of those in the last incidents, 81% were women, most of them were women, 17.6% were men, and 1.4% were intersex. Now, if we look at the types of situations, we can see that female and male experience very different situations. In the upper area of the graph, we see the experiences or situations by female victims. We found in the first place that females received unwanted gifts of sexual nature with 98.4%. And then 97.3% of the females received embarrassing and sexually explicit messages, photos, or videos over the internet. And 90.3% declare seeing somebody indecently exposing themselves to them. Now, if we see the same types of situations per males, they change considerably. We can see here, I don't want to move the screen because I have this thing showing up that I think you also see. So I was saying the females mostly experience unwanted comments about their physical appearance, body of a sexual nature, followed by unwanted gestures like touching, hugging, or kissing with 38.9%, and followed by unwanted sexual proposals or pressures for dates with 36%. So this is something that it's really important to review in detail to try to think about good strategies to avoid these types of situations happenings. Now, about the context in which sexual harassment occurs, we find that 83.1% of the perpetrators of this type of situations were men, 10.6% were women, and 2.5% are a combination of men and women. Most of the victims declare that the perpetrator was unknown for them. This is 41.2%. 22.8% declare that the perpetrator was a friend at a time. 19.6% identify the perpetrator as a neighbor, and 14.3% identify the perpetrator as a co-worker. The most common place of occurrence of this type of situation is the street or open space with 62.3%. We found that 10.9% of these sexual harassment situations occurred at work, 10.5% occurred in a shopping mall, market, or supermarket, and 9% of the situations occurred at home. In this slide, we can see the extent to which persons report sexual harassment to the authorities. And we found that 92.5% of these situations are not reported to the police, mainly because 63.3% think that the situations are not serious enough, and 42% because these types of sexual harassment situations happened all the time. Now, about the perception of people around different areas, we found that 85.8% of the persons of 18 years and above in St. Lucia feel safe walking alone in their neighborhood. There is a variation there between male and female. However, the decrease, well, in the case of males, we have a higher percentage, a slightly higher percentage of them that feel safe. And in the case of females, the percentage comes down a little bit. But if we change the perspective of the question and we add the element of the context of them walking alone in their neighborhood at night, we can see that the percentage of people that feel safe decreases considerably. We found that 61.7% of the persons feel safe walking alone in their neighborhood at night. And of course, if we look at the percentage of females, that decreases considerably, with only almost half of them saying that they feel safe walking alone around in their neighborhood at night. Now, the perception of safety also changes from space to space. Most of the people feel safe at their homes, at their workplace, and inside a personal owned vehicle. But this perception varies considerably. We found that for male and female and for everyone overall, 56.1% feel safe, feel less safe at the ATM in the street, 73.1% feel safe in the park, and 76.5% feel safe on public transport. Now, in this slide, we can see the changes in the perception about the level of crime. We specifically ask the interviewed persons if they perceive that the level of crime in St. Lucia has increased. And for St. Lucia, 83.9% have the perception that crime had increased, but this percentage decreases if we break it down by different geographical areas. In this case, we found that 69.1% of the people perceive this increase in the levels of crime in their city or town, 36.1% in the community or district, and only 24.1% perceive that crime has increased in their neighborhood. And this is usually a very common pattern that we find in all the crime victimization surveys around the world, and has to do with perhaps different explanations, but maybe there are some theories there about the influence of social media, of course, or news outlets, and also what people hear or what really experience around in their neighborhoods. Now, if we compare the perception vis-a-vis the victimization, we found that for St. Lucia, 38.3% of the population of 18 years and over feel unsafe, but the actual victimization percentage is only 18%. So the perception is pretty much double of the actual victimization percentage. Now, about the risk factors in the community, again, we already mentioned that this survey produces information not only about crimes, but also about other risky behaviors that are typically associated with violence. We found that 54.7% of the people interviewed declared that marijuana is consumed in the streets, 48.3% that alcohol is consumed in the streets, 44.3% declare seeing fights or quarrels in the streets, 31.8% declare that marijuana is sold in the streets, 25.2% declare gangs gathering, and finally 23.2% declare having witnessed or heard gunshots around the area in which they live. Now, this morning, there was already a mention about how crime is affecting people's lives. And this slide really tells the story about what's the impact in regards to the change of habits in people due to different circumstances. So persons declared in 45.5%, with a percentage of 45.5%, that they stopped carrying a lot of cash. 31.1% said that they stopped going to the beach at night. 21.5% stopped going back home late or leaving their home unoccupied. 21.2% stopped letting their children go out alone. And finally, 19.3% stopped going out at night. And again, there is a variation there between female and women, I mean, male and female. And you can see that typically the impact of of crime or these situations, it's higher in women in all of these circumstances. This survey also explored the possession of firearms, and we found that 11.7% of the population have seen people with firearms in their neighborhood. And I think Mr. Sankatari already explained the methodology about this. So this is the frequency of the presence of firearms in neighborhoods. Now about the opinion, what people think about owning a firearm and about which behaviors are acceptable that are associated with firearms, we found that 67.6% believe that owning a firearm is for family protection. 12.2% think that it's acceptable having an ordinary citizen carrying a firearm in public, and 2.5% declared that was acceptable using a firearm indiscriminately, for example, to celebrate. Now, we also asked in the survey about self-possession of firearms, and we only found that 3.1% of the household declare ownership of a firearm. We also asked them, to this 3.7%, what type of firearm they had, and the higher percentage have a handgun, a pistol or revolver. But we also found that out of those households that reported owning a firearm, 83% declare possessing one, and we cannot see it here, let me move this thing. In 12.2% of the cases, households declare owning 2 firearms. Now, the survey used an indirect research method called network scale-up method to estimate the percentage of households that own at least 1 firearm. And we found that the percentage was higher if we compare it to the one of self-declaration of ownership. According to the estimates, in St. Lucia, 10.8% of the households own at least 1 firearm. And we found slight variations there for the north area with a higher percentage, and a slight variation there for the south area. And finally, and this is the very end, just 2 indicators about the perceptions of people about the authorities' performance. We found that the authorities that are perceived as most effective are customs, city police, the special services unit, and well, you can see in the screen the percentage of this perception from authority to authority. There is a second indicator on the perception of the authorities, and it's about reliability. And we basically find the same pattern there. We have the customs, the city police, and the special services unit with the higher perception on reliability by the persons interviewed. And well, this is the end of the presentation. I just would like to add that the data and different methodological documents are already available in the website of the Central Statistical Office. And of course, like everyone already mentioned, it's really important to use this data. On our end, we will be very active in disseminating it and using it for different purposes. And again, I just would like to finish by thanking our partners in UNDP and acknowledging again the huge collaboration that we had with them to support the Central Statistical Office and all the actors involved in the development and implementation of this survey. And really congratulations. It is a very solid survey. It has indicators that are not common in other surveys that we find around the world. And hopefully you will be able to run a second wave of this survey later on. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Salome, for your presenting the results so concisely. I know we've all heard quite a bit this morning. I'm sure we have a lot of questions and comments on the results that were presented. So we will now open the floor for some questions and comments.
Just to highlight as well that we can use the Q&A or the chat to also indicate our questions for the participants attending. There's one question here, Chair, if you'd like to read that out.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the results. Very enlightening. Just a couple that occurred to me. Mr. St. Catherine indicated when he presented that that he did not, the districts were not included in the survey, if I recall well. But in the results, I'm seeing that the districts, the results apply at the district level. So could you explain that, please? Right, I think he said the results do not apply to districts, but in the breakdown, we saw surveys in the district. So that's 1 and 2. Just review the cost of crime again, 64-point-something million economic costs. So just an explanation of how that was arrived at. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So when I just to respond to the question regarding the way the results can be interpreted, at what geographic level they can be. All the districts were visited. All of the districts in St. Lucia, there were households visited, and we interviewed members of the households. The thing about statistical information is that you have to be careful. If you have 1,740 households that are represented in the survey, okay, if you can split it up into north and south, and you will get something like 800 cases, 1,200 cases being used to generate the indicator for north and south. But if, for example, you were to, what you will not see in those results that were presented by Salome is you are not going to see indicators on Soufrière. Okay, the district of Soufrière. What you would see and what you would see she'd present is the north represented by Castries and Gros-Islet. So that is a big enough area to generate sufficient cases to allow you to comment on the indicator for the north versus the south. Okay, so that what I said, I don't know if it probably maybe a bit, it might have been a bit misinterpreted, but every district was visited and there were cases, there were households and persons interviewed in every district, okay? At least with representation proportional to the size of the district. It's just that when you are reporting on the data set, you need a minimum number of cases to produce a robust result. I think Louisa would, I think Louisa might also have a little slide where she shows something called the coefficient of variation. That is the statistical significance of any indicator. So when you see the whole list of tables that are published from the survey, you will always see associated with every indicator a coefficient of variation that tells you exactly how reliable the indicator is. Because the most reliable indicator is an indicator where all members of the population answered the questions. Every member. In that case, you have no sample error. But as soon as you start to extract small samples like we did, we extracted a sample of 1,740, you begin to develop a sample error, both statistical error and non-statistical error. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, perhaps, I don't know, do you want to comment on this? Because I was going to jump to the cost.
Okay, yeah, maybe I can just complement.
Yes.
The publication, in the webpage, we will also put the presentation, the main presentation. We also have tabulations. And within the tabulations, there are different topics, and they indicate the level of precision of the estimations. I do have the slide just to put it as an example, if you wish to see it. Can you see it?
It's blank. Oh,
yeah,
no,
now we can see it.
Now we can see it.
Okay, so the presentation in the webpage will have all these tabulations with all the information. The presentation that Salome did, it's a short presentation of main results, but we have many more. So we have 8 different topics, the ones that Salome talked about. And then the quality of information, it's about the level of precision within these tabulations. And they are shadowed in different colors. They are in white, they are in also yellow and kind of reddish. And it depends on how precise the estimations are according to the level of precision that we're looking for. For example, we have here tabulation 6.4. It's about male population, age 18 years or over. And we can see in the bottom part that we have this note. So you have there specified the range of precision that we have, the acceptable level of precision for using it in statistically, right? It's between 0 and 25, and from 26 forward, it's not that precise. So you have to be a little bit more careful when using them, and you can use it for qualitative study, right? For qualitative purposes more than quantitative. But it's a specific thing that we put in the tabulation so you know how precise they are and how to use them. If you have any more questions, we can talk about them, but I think we're fine with that.
I see a question online from Juan Pablo.
Yeah, but there was another part of the question. Sorry, I think he was asking about how did we estimated the cost of crime, and I wanted to go back to it. Sorry, sure. Miguel.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Just wanted to show the slide again. Let me see. I think you can see it now.
Yes.
Yes. So basically, this is very. Okay, basically, the total cost of crime, the impact was estimated at $64,082,582 Eastern Caribbean dollars. And the way this is divided, some of it, the majority, I mean, the high percentage, was costed as the losses as a result of crime. This is, we ask people about their estimates in terms of money, of dollars, because of the crime that they were victim of, let's say of robbery or all these crimes that have to do with losing money, objects, I don't know. So this is the highest percentage. And then we add, and this is the second percentage here, we add how much a household expends on protection measures. And this was the list that we show. So again, we ask them how much do they think that they spent on this, on installing or adopting these protection measures. And this is how this cost is estimated. Yep.
Okay. I hope that provided some insight into how the cost of crime was calculated. So we have a question from Juan Pablo Cordillo from InfoSegura, who is asking what are the next steps on dissemination and government follow-up of results? That may be a question for Mr. Mathre, if he's in the room.
Yeah. With regard to the way forward for the CSO, it relates to dissemination. The intention is to make available all the results in all the respective formats available on our website. We also intend to also produce some snippets of the most telling and instructive statistics, and to make that available on our website. We also will be doing so in both Excel format as well as infographics. The way forward, we already have it in mind to do a second round of that survey once we're able to do so with the support of the our government as it relates to the financial resources that will be required to do that. The recommendation is that the survey should be done every 2 to 3 years. So we're looking, hopefully, to do a second round in coming 2 to 3 years, once the respective financial resources are made available, either with some support from our development partners and part funding from the government. But this is our intention as it relates to the way forward for this initiative. Thank you.
Okay, I see another question online on the question and answer panel from Satya Diaram. Dear colleagues, a question on reasons for not reporting crime. 23.7% of the population did not report a crime because they believe it's not serious enough. Is there any data on type of crime they believe is not serious?
Yes, I can answer that question. You have that in tabulation 2.3. And the 4 crimes that got the highest percentage of not serious enough was 52.1 for cybercrime, 34.5 for consumer fraud, 32.1 for domestic burglary, and 22.9 for threats. And I repeat, it's in tabulation 2.3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, colleagues, I think that there is another question from YouTube and Facebook. Why is it motorcycle theft differentiated from theft in your results?
Want me to answer that one too? Okay, well, within the 14 crimes that they're measured in the NCVS, they are divided in household crimes and in personal crimes. Household crimes are those crimes that affect the whole household, as it is called. For example, domestic burglary, theft of a vehicle, theft of a motorcycle, because this crime, or for example, the vehicle, the motorcycle is used by all members. So there's the division. So theft, it's a personal crime, which is asked only to the person that was victim of that crime. For example, leaving a handbag somewhere and then someone took it, right? It's robbery without violence, personal crime, and motorcycle theft, it's a household crime. That's why it's divided and measured differently. And you can also compare that with police records. Actually, in the police records, they have the division for motorcycle and personal theft and robbery.
Okay, thank you, Luisa, for that. I would also like to say that the data sets and information from the CVS will be available on the stats website, but it's not up as yet. If you need to get the information and data immediately, you could forward an email to statsdept@govt.lc, and you will be able to access that data set from the National Crime Victimization Survey. Okay, I see another question from Dr. Clem Edward. Is there any plan to invite various stakeholders or NGOs to consider information as to development of relevant programs to address and reduce the perceived crimes?
We probably need a policy maker for this one, right? Someone involved in policy making, or preferably at the national level, perhaps Mr. Emmanuel, Miss Bailey. I don't want to put you on the spot. Commissioner Daisy.
Well, I would say from my standpoint that definitely the data and the information is there. So it can be used by stakeholders and NGOs, etc., in developing their own plans and programs to move forward with addressing issues of crime and violence. It's a very rich data source. It paints the picture of what the situation of crime is in St. Lucia. So, and not only from the standpoint of, say, administrative data, which is what we get from the police, which is what is reported, but from people who have been victims of crime who may not necessarily have reported it to the police. So that hidden figure of crime, through this survey, we get a better idea of what it is and how the people feel about crime and the agencies that deal with crime. So it is very informative, and I would encourage all civil society and other agencies who program and who are involved in working with, for example, young people or in probation and parole, etc., to really take a look at the data set and the information it provides. The infographics are very illustrative, so you can have an idea of what's going on in order to create programs and policies based on that. Are there any other questions from Facebook or?
No.
Any other questions from the room? Comments? Okay. Well, I would like to say on behalf of the United Nations Development Program and the Carry Secure Project, a sincere thank you for all who attended the session this morning. I would also like to express the gratitude to the United Nations, to the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, for injecting the financial assistance for the conducting of the St. Lucia National Crime Victimization Survey. Also to the staff of the Central Statistical Office, and of course the government of St. Lucia and all other government agencies who have taken the time to get involved in the CVS process. A sincere thank you to them as well. All our presenters this morning as well, from UNODC to the Honorable Minister, thank you for taking the time to present at this session this morning. I'd also like to read a comment which just came through from Ms. Janie Joseph, the Director of Gender. A comment to congratulate the team responsible for putting all this together. This is very useful data that will form the rationale for policy and legislative change necessary to respond to and prevent crime in St. Lucia. So thank you very much, Ms. Joseph, for that. She has been part of the process from the beginning. I'd also like to remind you again that the information from the CVS, if you need that information right away, it is available from, please forward an email to statsdept, that's statsdept@govt.lc, and they will be able to forward that information to you. So on behalf of everyone who has been involved in the CVS. Oh, one more thing, Salome.
Yeah, there was, sorry, Miguel, there was another comment on the chat. It was about the specific indicators used in this research, which may have been unique if we want to repeat them. Maybe just comment really quickly. Basically, there are three, not unique, but they're not widely used, and are the ones about sexual harassment, and about cybercrime, and about firearm possession. So these three set of thematic areas make the St. Lucia survey a very unique and robust survey, because sometimes in other countries we find that some of the stakeholders find challenging to include these topics. But yeah, so we're very impressed that all the stakeholders in St. Lucia agreed on including these topics, because they're very sensible topics, but again, very relevant. So just, yeah, sexual harassment, cybercrime, and firearm possession.
And I'll read another comment, very interesting statistics on what our crime situation is. And this data will be very useful to many, and that's from Olympia Joseph. But I just like to say a big thank you to everybody who contributed to the process, all the agencies who were involved. And really, I would like to encourage anybody who would find this information useful for research, for developing programs and policies, to really take a look at the information which was generated from this survey. As we say, it is very significant in that it's the first survey to use UN international standards within the Eastern Caribbean to conduct a crime victimization survey of this type. So I would like to thank you very much, Mr. St. Catherine, for his leadership and guidance, the UNODC for all the support that they provided from the beginning to the end. Lucia and Giada have been with us in St. Lucia, assisting and providing that technical expertise as well. To my colleagues at UNDP on the Car Secure project, thank you also for your continuous support in supporting the CVS in St. Lucia. To everybody who contributed in any way, I would like to say thank you. And of course, once again, to USAID for the financial support that they have provided as well. Unfortunately, they were not able to be with us today as they are preparing for their independence celebrations. So on behalf of everyone here, we would like to wish them happy independence as they celebrate tomorrow. So thank you all for attending the session today. We should have some additional information available in terms of the presentations, etc., pretty soon. So thanks again, and I think we can end it here.
Great. Thank you so much, Miguel. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Bye.